If you would like to become a volunteer trustee or request further information, visit chamberpension.ky, email admin@pensions.ky, or call 745-7630. The Cayman Islands Chamber of Commerce Pension Plan. We're here for you.
Money Sense, bringing an informed financial perspective to the Cayman community.
A very good morning and warm welcome to Money Sense. I'm Simon Caudry and I'm delighted to be joined in the studio this morning by Dr. Rob Murray. Dr. Murray is the CEO and co-founder of Transformed Leader. He works with global industry leaders to, in his words, overcome their greatest challenges. It's wonderful to have you with us in the studio this morning, Rob, to share some of your insights into leadership and things we can all do to become perhaps more self-aware and better versions of ourselves.
Thank you for having me.
Well, look, the first thing I want to talk about is leadership and some of the experiences you've had with leaders that you work with. You work with a slate of people that envious to the rest of us, I'm sure, in terms of the people that you deal with, what industries they're in, some of the background they have. But what can we learn? What are some of the top ideas, top tips that you think that everyday people can take from what these really successful people have been going through, the challenges they have to overcome?
Yeah. Well, Simon, I work with ordinary people. I've found that no matter where you come from, what company you are, how much money you've got, what responsibility you have, we're just human beings. And there's something that unites us all together. We want our lives to count. We want them to mean something. We want to work hard. We want our work to matter. And so I get to work across a spectrum of industry leaders, teams, and organizations all across the board. And what are some of the realities out there you're asking? I think we're living in a leadership age where most of the messages we hear in books, in conferences, are think smarter, work harder. And it's a fantastic strategy, but it's limited. Willpower is only going to get you so far. Brain power is only going to get you so far. And when I look around, when I do the research, I realize that leaders are tired, they're exhausted. Like today, this morning, I woke up, I have no clue where I'm at, where I'm going, how I feel.
But the beautiful ocean makes it better slightly.
This island makes life way more exciting.
Yeah.
But I'm noticing it's logical that our strategies of just power up and keep going are not going to work. And so I show up, and my partner Jack and I and our organization is we're trying to work through deep change strategies, transformative strategies of leadership. How do we get below the surface of these, ideas and concepts, tips and tricks to actually get into the life of a leader, to help them get a little something with more substance, and to face the world perhaps with a little more strength than what they had the day before. It's not easy. Our work is miserable. It's not instant. It's not a microwave. But we believe muscle has to be built, and this leadership work that we're doing is just a little bit different.
We started off this conversation by using the word leadership. I introduced it as leadership. You've used the word leadership a lot. A lot of people who will be listening to this show will say, I'm not a leader, though. I just work for an organization. I work for the Ministry of Finance. I work for one of the banks on Ireland. I work for one of the accounting firms. I'm not in a leadership role. So is this applicable to me? Is this relevant to me? You keep using this word leader, Rob. Yeah. Why is this relevant to me?
I love what you're saying. And what I've come to figure out in my research, which they force you to do, is you have to always create the definition of any word you want to use. If I was to tell you the sky is blue, a researcher would say, prove it. Well, when it comes to the word leadership, it's like, well, what is your interpretation of leader? The way that I'm using it today, the way I see leadership, is a little less than somebody standing on stage telling everyone else what to do. It's a little bit less about positional authority, which is part of leadership. But leadership, the definition that I subscribe to, is the fact that all of us in some way are leading someone, and if we're not, we're leading ourselves. It's the concept of self-leadership. If you can't lead yourself, you're probably going to be a pretty bad leader of others. And so it can come down to the most simplest fundamental reality that when you woke up today, are you leading yourself in a way that is responsible? It is maybe admirable, or it is just something that you can now take and offer to other people. You're right. I mean, leadership across the board is an unbelievably complicated topic. But in the end, too, we've heard of servant leadership. We've heard of all different types of leadership styles. I look at it as the world very rarely goes anywhere unless someone takes the first step. What does that first step look like? What is the posture of that first step? Are you forcing me to follow you? Are you inviting me to follow you? Are you inviting me into a vision far greater than the life that I'm living now and I'm inspired to follow you? Are you motivating me? Is there a carrot and a stick? There are so many styles.
It could be the most junior person in an organization being brave enough to make a suggestion. The first day or the second day they're in the organization, they see something that looks a bit odd, bit quirky. Why are we doing this? Make a suggestion.
Yes.
That you're saying is that is in itself leadership. It's having the confidence. It's having the ability to project your own voice, your own opinion.
Yes, and it's probably not for the show, but the sad part about that is when someone does have the confidence to lead something, sometimes our organizations have bought into leadership paradigms that don't support that kind of voice. So we may look at that person and go, great idea, why are you talking? Because perhaps it's an authoritarian top-down. But there are so many organizational paradigms that I get to study. So when I walk into a company, I'm looking for what are the underlying values and paradigms that shape these organizations. And whether you like it or not, you're part of that system of leadership. Then I work with individual leaders within that system. And sometimes it's for them to revolt against the system. You know, I work in a company where no one is allowed to offer their opinions. Okay, would you like to offer your opinions? Yes. What's that going to feel like? Terrifying. What could it cost you? My job. Is it worth it? Not sure. So I help people navigate those choices. They get to make their own life choices. But perhaps you wake up and you decide, I actually want to make a change in my organization. You may find out you no longer are at that organization. Or you may become the catalyst for change that starts to open it up to a whole new change. That's the world I'm in. It's exciting and terrifying.
I was listening to that and I was thinking to myself, well, I was trying to recall my early youthful days when you're first person, first new job, and you're terrified of all those senior, experienced people around you, and the idea that you have the confidence to have an idea or the willingness to express it. The assumption sometimes is that people are going to dismiss you because you're too junior or because they don't even want to speak to you. They're too busy in their general day. So how does one overcome that? Because there will be people listening to this who go, this resonates. I see this every day. I've got these ideas to help transform this organization, or when I say transform, to make a small difference. But the confidence just isn't there, or the perception is no one's going to be listening to me. No one wants to listen. Everyone's too busy. We seem to live in a world which is just too busy all the time.
Yes. Well, in the dream world, or in a hopeful world, that you are part of a company that no matter where you are with power or position, you are invited by those that kind of hold the integrity of that organization, that the table is always open for ideas. It's always open for suggestions. You could be the janitor of the building and you are invited to have a voice. I think we've created silos and we've created hierarchies where most of the CEOs and executives we work with, they're lonely, they're lying, they're hiding, they're pretending, they're having to project strength when they don't have it. And I'm a huge fan of saying, I only know what I know. I'm only capable of what I'm capable of. And in my position of power, whatever that may be within the organization, there are people that could be far more creative, insightful, strategic, aligned with where we're headed. And what if I became a collaborative leader to invite those people, no matter who they are, to offer a voice at the table? That's the dream. Option 2 is, and I've heard it said, I'm trying to remember if it was a consultant, Peter Block, in his book, I'm not sure, but I heard this said, when you are a part of an organization that does not allow for what you're describing, this expressive opportunity for people lower down on the ranks, so to speak, he says, create within your own entity or your own unit or your own department what you hope to see embodied in the whole organization. So you can either be a victim, and you could be a true victim, actually. I'm trying to speak, I'm not allowed to speak, I'm not allowed to have a voice. Or you can turn around and say, well, I'm not going to influence the whole organization, I'm not welcome at the table. What can I do in my department to embody the values and the vision of what I wish the whole organization had? And here's what happens. You get some level of empowerment. You may or may not be supported on a larger scale, but you could become the catalyst because people start to notice you. If they don't treat people well in the organization, but you treat people well in your little team, if they don't create opportunities for creativity, but you do, you can add all those values. And before you know it, they're saying, what's happening in Simon's department? What's going on over there? 23 floors down. Well, you guys have a height restriction. What's going on a few floors down? And before, they're going, Simon, what is Simon doing down there? Oh, he's treating people like human beings. He's respecting them. Everyone has a voice at the table. There is some level of respect for the humanity of the whole person and the whole leader. And Simon's doing this and this and this and this. Oh my gosh, he's out producing. He's got a culture of low retention. And then they're going, Simon, what are you doing? And before you know it, you could become the gift that the organization needs. And it slowly turns the tide in a very toxic organization.
When you talk with, let's go back to the definition of leader, when you talk to those who are at the apex of an organization and you express these views and you say there are ways of improving, you discuss with them ways of improving, building up the confidence of junior people to express their views, to get their feedback. Are you generally finding receptiveness to that idea, or are they, I really have no interest in what the junior people are saying? So the reason I say it is the people who are listening to this will go, they don't know what the senior people sometimes have in the back of their mind. So are you finding that they are wishing people would approach them more often? They're wishing that people would give them ideas, or are they, I'm too busy, I don't want to speak to you?
Yeah. Yes. The answer is yes. I think it's all of the above. I think we're setting up a self-fulfilling prophecy of, I've got it handled, I don't need you, but wait, why is no one showing up? We're actually sometimes unapproachable, we're closed off. So I agree, you don't see often executives, we see it in some companies where they're walking through the hallways. They're not doing it as a trinket, they're doing it actually to walk through the hallways to say, what does it feel like to be you today? What are you facing? What are your leadership challenges? Where are you at? They're I wouldn't say they're trying to be one with the people. They're trying to create an open, revolving door, and it can go both ways. I think the problem with leadership that we've talked about earlier is it depends where you're camping out as a leader. You could be a leader because of your association. I'm with Simon, so I'm a leader. Or, you know what? I have this title, so I'm a leader. Or I'm the smartest guy in the room, so I get to lead the room. Or I'm the strongest guy in the room, and I get to lead. Or whatever it is, we've camped out on these things, and then everyone else feels a little more alienated. But I believe that leaders with strategic purpose and passion, and then a word that doesn't sound really cool, but wholeness and integration, they're integrated leaders, become the conduits that I think are for the most healthiest organizations that are out there. The technicalities of what you're asking are real. What does that look like? How do you approach the leader? How do you get ideas in organizations? How are decisions made? Is it a distributed decision model? It can go on and on and on and on. How are the pay structures handled? Those, again, tie into leadership paradigms held by an organization. Is it tribal? Is it hierarchical? Is it family-driven? Who knows? But I'm just telling you, that's why I get to show up, Simon. I will not solve anything today. All I'm telling you is I play a small part in the leadership industry to bring back the value of the human side of leadership, not the organizational side. And yet we need both.
Look, we're going to take a short break. But after the break, we're going to continue this conversation. I want to come back straight after the break and quiz you on this word you used, wholeness. Because the audience listening to this, we live and work in the Cayman Islands, a financial centre, and there'll be people going, what on earth do you mean by wholeness? That doesn't have dollar signs associated. What on earth is that?
And it really does. I can't wait to tell you.
So let's just take a quick break and then we'll rejoin this conversation, Rob.
Are you looking for a rewarding way to make a difference in your community while gaining skills in strategy and leadership? The Cayman Islands Chamber of Commerce Pension Plan is seeking volunteers to join their Board of Trustees. Representing all sectors of the Cayman Islands' economy, volunteer trustees are vital to providing quality pension services and play an important role in protecting member benefits. If you would like to become a volunteer trustee or request further information, visit chamberpension.ky, email admin@pensions.ky, or call 745-7630. The Cayman Islands Chamber of Commerce Pension Plan. We're here for you.
This is
Money Sense, bringing an informed financial perspective to the Cayman community. Brought to you by the CFA Society Cayman Islands.
And now, more Money Sense.
Welcome back to Money Sense. We're going to continue our conversation with Dr. Rob Murray on leadership and tools to help us overcome our everyday work challenges. But I did say before the break that you used the word wholeness, which we're going to have to ask you to explain what this means.
Yes. And previously you talked about leadership challenges. We love to help leaders identify what are your greatest leadership challenges, because we want to get you right at the edge of your growth. Like, what hurts, or what do you want that you're trying to get to? What do you need? But once we get there, most of the strategies that people use aren't very whole, or they aren't very integrated. The strategies that most of us use in leadership, and I shared it briefly earlier, was this idea of I'm going to outthink myself, I'm going to strategize. But a leader who is whole, using our model, the human operating system, is this idea of it's not about applications, it's about an operating system. And the operating system essentially says this: leaders have a mind, they have a body, they have a heart and a soul. And we define that as the heart, soul, mind, and strength of your leadership. So we invite leaders to integrate the heart and soul of their leadership, which we call going below the line. Sometimes it's going inside of what else is in there, Simon. Like, I've seen your work, but what else is happening? And a leader that is aware of all of who they are and is leading through heart, soul, mind, and strength is what we would call a leader who is learning how to be authentic and eventually integrated. And if you keep doing those laps, you could become a transformative leader. But it's very hard to be a transformative leader if all you do is inspire people to work harder. Like, that's not transformation. That's just like, get it done, get it done, get it done. No one's being transformed. Heart, soul, mind, and strength demystifies wholeness, integration. And I know I'm still confusing people, but what does that mean? And so we try to help demystify the heart and soul of your leadership and bring it back up to the people that just want to get stuff done.
Is what you're talking about getting people to become more productive, more successful? Is it also about stopping people burning out?
I think, yes. I think, how do you define success? So we define success with what we call both the upper and lower quadrants. Like, success is relying on a great strategy, mind, walking out that strategy, executing, strength. But it's also reliant on feeling connected to the work, the meaning you have with the people you work with, fulfilling a vision. Now we're getting into soul, like having more meaning and purpose behind the work you do, starting with why. That's all heart and soul work. It's like I'm successful because the work that I do has more meaning, more substance. The culture is stronger. Of course, we're hitting some of our targets and our goals, but we're not doing it at the extent of leaving dead bodies in our wake. We're not running over people.
Or having enough time to enjoy the day-to-day life outside of the work obligations.
100%. And so, yes, people do burn out. Sometimes they blow themselves up. Sometimes they take advantage of those that work for them in ways that are really unkind. And then we wonder why we are struggling to hire people or keep people, retain people. We're wondering why the numbers are down. We can't continue to do great work. It's because we are creating a culture where we only value what you can do for the organization. And so I just think I'm a huge fan of the wholeness.
There must be, I'm sure there are a lot of people who are nodding their heads as they listen to this and saying, that's the organization I work for. God, this is what I have to go through every day. Are there easy wins? Are there easy steps that people can start to take to just try and nudge things in the right direction, or start the process? Or is this, we've got to get Dr. Rob in. He's got to persuade the leadership team. They've got to buy into the strategy. Is it a multi-year process, or are there small things that people can just nudge things in a positive direction?
Well, I'll say in companies that are set up more with a hierarchical structure of power and the way they disperse power, sometimes it's helpful for us to work with executives to buy into some of this work, to proliferate the language throughout the organization. But a small win, Simon, no matter who you are, and I said this previously before the break, is, again, you can decide who you want to be at that company. So I may show up in that company, and here's a small win. Man, it's really sad for me to be in this company. Sadness just means it's not what I wished it was. I'm really angry and frustrated. Well, anger invites you to do something about it. What can I do working at this company? Do I leave? Do I stay? What kind of difference can I make? That's what anger invites you to. So I think leaders that are caught up to themselves are more grounded and less reactive and reflective. So I may walk into a meeting and I may be a part of a terrible organization and I may just say, you know what, I don't really enjoy working here. But now I'm responsible for myself. So the question I may ask is, what am I going to do about working at an organization that I don't want to work at? I feel empowered to make the decisions that I need to make. I either stay and I become a part of a hopeful solution, or I may decide, I think I perhaps need to move on.
That's a really difficult decision sometimes for
Correct.
people, because you're giving up the knowledge of income and you're taking a punt on something that hasn't yet been formed fully.
Correct. And so what happens is people start looking for other jobs. They start looking for other opportunities. And that's what happens. And so whether you like it or not, you cannot show up to anything I'm saying today. But the reality is some of your people could be they're feeling that they want something different for their lives. And if you don't figure out what feeling and meaning and purpose and why is, you're going to miss out on helping them lead towards those means.
Sometimes I find, or I read about, or I observe that there's bitterness in an organization when someone leaves. Why did that person leave our organization? And it strikes me often as quite bizarre, because presumably neither party were terribly happy that, yes, you've got that human being is doing work which it helps to generate profits for the organization, but perhaps a different human being would be more fitted with that organization. Yes. Is that something you come across and you try and encourage people? Don't be sad when people leave. Don't be unhappy about this.
Yeah.
Because it might be better for you culturally.
Human nature at the core of who you and I are, no matter what we do, we want to matter and we want to belong. Okay? It's like, I want my life to count. I'm sitting here with you today because I want what I do to matter, and I hope I belong to you in some kind of way. Like, are we good? We are tribal in nature as human beings. We are safer in a crowd. And what happens is when our identities merge with our professions, when we become what we do, which can be very dangerous, when someone leaves your company, it's almost like you've directly left them. It's an assault on who they are and their leadership. And when they kick you out of the club, or when they let you go, it's almost like you've been, again, kicked out of the tribe. Human beings, we really struggle psychologically to differentiate between, oh, I'm just not suited for the role. I'm actually quite terrible at that job, and I deserve to be fired. We interpret that as, no one wants me, I'm all alone, I'm getting kicked out, I'm going to die. And your body tells you that. I'm just telling you. You don't think it's telling you that, but it does.
It's interesting because we are at an economic point, I think, where layoffs are probably going to start happening more than they were in the previous few years. There's this talk of recessions around the corner. And so the chances are people are going to be experiencing these emotions of, I've just been let go by my firm. I've just been fired. I must have been the worst person in the organization.
Yes.
They must hate me.
Yes.
That must be a very difficult thing, or must be. I've gone through it myself many, many years ago. It's difficult to go through.
Well, and most of the people, when you leave, you don't realize most leaders on this listening to this are lonely. And you don't know you're lonely. And most of your connective relationships are with the people you work with. Well, you're pretty vulnerable. The moment you lose your job, you don't realize your friends were colleagues. And you can have colleagues who are friends, but now you've left the company, they feel like you've rejected them or they've rejected you, and before you know it, you wake up and you go, oh my gosh, where are my friends? Yeah. Scary stuff.
Especially, I think, in a small island like this, because there are a lot of people who live in this island who come new to the island, and their friends are the people that they work with because they're the first people they meet. They've not necessarily grown up here. Yeah. They didn't go to school here. And even if they did, people then migrate to other countries as well. So it's quite a community of a melting pot where the people you work with are the people you're sometimes very close to.
Yes, exactly. And so, Simon, that's why when we get into the heart of leadership, a lot of my work has been around emotional intelligence, and I'm trying to help leaders articulate what's happening inside of them. I'm helping them clean it up a little bit so that it is a little more useful in the real world. Because do you know how you're feeling today? I don't know how I'm feeling today. I haven't taken the time. But isn't it interesting? They're saying you think after you feel. Your feelings inform your thoughts. And I'm a huge fan of helping leaders figure out what they're feeling so they can become leaders of influence, substance, meaning, purpose, success, performance, you name it. But it can't just be get out there, read another book, and get going.
So you said there you're a huge fan of helping leaders, individuals, understand how they're feeling. And that links, I think, into, I say I think because I'm not the expert you asked, but it links in, I think, to this concept of emotional intelligence, being, in a sense, being intelligent enough to understand what your own emotions are. Is that broadly how one should interpret it?
I think it's very hard to become aware of everyone else, but unwilling to look at yourself. And I think you have to start with yourself. And so I just help leaders pay attention. It's this simple. I can walk into an executive boardroom today, and they think this is the most ridiculous thing. And I'll just sit there and say, how are you feeling? I'm trying to bring the psychological aspect of being a human being. Well, we don't do that in this organization. Oh, okay. So we're sociopaths and psychopaths in this organization.
But no one must go in. No one, when you go into a room and you say, how are you feeling? No one's going to be honest with you.
No, no one's honest.
Okay.
No. And that's the whole point. They'll say, I'm fine. It's great. Who cares? Let's get on with it. What are we doing here? In fact, they'll dismiss that part of it because they're so afraid that that part of the meeting will take over the rest of the meeting. When are we going to get to work? Well, here's the difference, Simon. I don't know if I matter and belong until you've actually genuinely looked at me and said, Rob, how are you today? And I go, Simon, I'm not sure. And you go, all right, well, just know I really value you on this team. And if you figure out how you're feeling, is there anything that I can do that's appropriate for me as your boss? Not everything's appropriate, but if it is, let me know.
This doesn't smell dollar signs, though.
Which
there's no dollar signs around this
100%.
narrative.
I know, but there is. That's what people don't realize. And I don't use this as a bait and switch. But when I feel seen, valued, and appreciated by you, people work harder. They stick around longer. They actually say no to promotions with more money because of a lifestyle choice or a connective choice. I'm getting more. I get offered more money over there, but I just feel seen, valued, appreciated, and part of who I want to be in the world is affirmed in this organization. I think I'm going to stay. Losing people's expensive, dollar signs. Keeping people is great for profitability. It's great for developing those leaders. All the investment you put into them actually pays off. There's actually dollar signs. People just don't know how to measure it yet.
But culturally, the idea, can you imagine that you work in a big organization and the boss one day sits you down, you're in a conference room and says, we're going to start talking about our feelings.
Yeah, I wouldn't encourage them to do that.
Okay.
I wouldn't encourage them to do that. And if you've heard that from me in a way, just realize I do it in a contextualized way that helps make sense.
Sure.
If a boss does that, in fact, we encourage people to never use the stuff we share with them until they themselves, the word is embodied. Like, have you embodied this work? Is it coming out of you or are you teaching it? It's not a tip or a trick.
So we're not saying go back to the office this afternoon and start talking about your emotions. This is something you've got to get right in your own mind first.
Exactly. Prove it in your own life. Wake up to work in the morning. Pay attention to what you're feeling before you walk into work. That's becoming self-aware. Learn how to process those emotions in a way that are more constructive for you to be a greater leader. Test it out. Fail, win, lose. Get angry at me. Do whatever you want. Call me. Tell me it doesn't work. That's fine. That's great. You're having feelings. You're angry at me. I'm good with that. At least you're having feelings, expressing them. And then in time, you learn how emotions can open you up to so much more. I am not a huge fan of emotions, by the way. I think they're annoying sometimes. I wish I didn't have them. Sometimes they're really irresponsible. They come out sideways. But you cannot afford to ignore them. So I have chosen to become intelligent about them and help other leaders do so. If I can help you become more authentic, here's what that means. What's happening inside and in the outside, there's a congruency. You're becoming aware. You're learning how to express the fullness of who you are. After maybe 2-3 years, you start to realize, man, I actually tell the truth. I'm not fabricating a lot of my leadership. And then in time, you become more of an integrated leader where this kind of head and heart is showing up and you walk in and you're starting to lead as a more integrated leader. I'm doing those laps. I'm sure I've got another couple more years.
It's not an overnight path. There's nothing in your research, your books, your advice, which is instantaneous. It's going to take time. It's a hard slog, but that's what it is.
It's a hard slog, and everyone that gives you a quick win, go give it a shot. We've been trying it for a while, and unfortunately, we sell a journey. We don't sell a destination, but I believe the journey gets you to a few destinations for the life you want to live.
Well, there you go. That perhaps is the most appropriate time to end our show. We always end with questions still to be asked and time, unfortunately, against us. But Rob, I think you, if I'm not mistaken, you have a website where quite a lot of these ideas are expressed. drrobmurray.com, is that right?
drrobmurray.com, and our business website is transformedleader.com.
Do go to one of those websites and just listen or read some of the articles and reflect on some of the points that you're making.
Brilliant.
So, Dr. Rob, thank you very much for coming on the show this morning. I sincerely appreciate your time. Absolute pleasure. Look, before we depart and leave the airwaves, a quick reminder that Money Sense is available for viewing and listening through the CFA Society Cayman Islands webpage, on LinkedIn and on YouTube. Simply search on any of those at Money Sense Cayman and it will be appearing. With all that said, it remains to thank you for tuning in. Thank you for devoting some of your morning to our show, and please do so again in 2 weeks' time.
Money Sense is brought to you by the Chamber Pension Plan. For further information, visit chamberpension.ky.
Are you looking for a rewarding way to make a difference in your community while gaining skills in strategy and leadership? The Cayman Islands Chamber of Commerce Pension Plan is seeking volunteers to join their Board of Trustees. Representing all sectors of the Cayman Islands' economy, volunteer trustees are vital to providing quality pension services and play an important role in protecting member benefits. If you would like to become a volunteer trustee or request further information, visit chamberpension.ky, email admin@pensions.ky, or call 745-76.